So let's look at individual slides. Oh, here's one of my favorites. Start to read that. Let's read down a bit. Research studies conducted at the University of Minnesota and the Applied Research Center of the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania show that the use of, finally, the word PowerPoint pops up. Do you realize this is the first hint of what this slide was about? We had to read in about 20 words before we had any idea what the slide was about. Notice also that the headline on this slide is absolutely useless. The headline gives me no idea what the slide is about. It not only doesn't tell me what the result of the research was, it doesn't summarize the finding of the research, it doesn't even tell me what the research was about. So this slide gets off to a bad start and frankly never recovers. It's long and it's wordy. Let's look at a better way of doing it. Good visuals help. This slide shouts the message at you. Good visuals help. They help do three things. They help make meetings more interesting and efficient. They help make presenters more persuasive, and they help improve the presenter's image. I think you'd agree this is a much more effective way of delivering that message. And not only that, with this slide up on the screen, you as the presenter are encouraged to walk back and forth between the slide and the audience. You'll walk back as you perhaps you'll bring these 3 bullets out one at a time. And by the way, let me make a comment about that. I would bring all 3 slides out at once if I was going to read through them very quickly. If I'm going to cover them just about as fast as an audience member can read them, then I'm going to bring them out all at once. But if I'm going to spend even 30 seconds talking about this first bullet, make meetings more interesting and efficient, if I'm going to take 30 seconds to explain exactly what was meant by that, then I don't want the other 2 bullets visible while I'm doing that. So don't invite your audience to be reading ahead of you. So there's a simple example of a bad visual converted into a rather good visual. Now let's take a look at another slide. At first glance, this one looks awful, but it was used in a way that actually made it effective. I saw a chief financial officer use this slide in a presentation. He said to his audience, "I'm going to use last year's P&L statement as the structure for my talk today." He said, "I'm going to cover everything that's on the slide here. We're going to start at the top with revenue, and we'll work our way all the way down to the bottom to the net profit. Let's get started." Boom. Now notice this awful slide was up for maybe 10 or 15 seconds, just long enough so people could see what it was and they could get the big perspective. So after 10 or 15 seconds, before anybody got sick of it or tried to really read it, he then said, "Let's take a closer look. And in fact, let's start with total sales." And he then proceeded to spend the next 2 or 3 minutes talking about how they had managed to achieve such a dramatic increase in sales between 2010 and 2011. And notice there's nothing else up on the screen to distract you while he's talking about sales. Now, since this was a manufacturing company, the next issue after sales is cost of goods sold, so the first major expense item. And notice now total sales kind of faded into the background, and now everybody's attention was on cost of sales. And once again, a dramatic increase here, but of course the sales themselves had gone up. And so now he had a chance to talk about supply chain issues and how they were able to do some more efficient sourcing and so on. And there was no other distracting data up on the screen. He went from there to research and development expenses. So I just wanted to show you something like this awful slide might be useful if it's up for a few seconds only to show the big picture or to create perspective. But please don't leave an awful slide like this up for more than a few seconds. Let's look at another example. Now this is an example that we got from a client. What it shows here is what customers value. So they did some research to determine on 5 issues, on the issues of quality, price, service, attitude, and capabilities, what is it that customers value the most? And so if you take a few minutes, you can read this and you can see that the thing they gave the highest or most importance to was obviously quality. Price and service were also important. And when you get way down to asking them what's the 5th most important thing, very few people listed quality and price as the 5th most important. And indeed, they gave attitude and capabilities 4th and 5th most important. Okay, it takes a few minutes or a close read to get the meaning out of this. The presenter then combined that with another slide. So the one we just looked at is moved to the left now. And now the presenter is making this point. They said the slide on the left shows what customers really want. This is what they're looking for. But the slide on the right shows the image they have of our brand. So on the one hand, the slide on the left shows that quality is very, very highly valued by them. They think that's the most important. But when they think of us and our brand, they think that our broad capabilities are most important. But broad capabilities are something the customer doesn't care much about. This is complicated information, isn't it? If you need to put across complicated information and comparisons like this, do it, but fairly quickly summarize it in this way. Notice what we would do with this. First, we would show these complex slides if we must, and then we're going to summarize. We're going to say to our audience, what this slide shows us is this unfortunate message. We are weak on the very attributes the market values highly, and we are strong on attributes they don't care about. This is the message of the data. So it's important to understand not just what is my data, but what is the message of the data. And the important thing for you as a presenter is to find some way of putting that message across in very big font and in very loud language. In other words, when there is a clear message, if it's an important message, find some way to almost shout it at the audience. Shout it politely, but put some emphasis in your voice. So you can deliver this by saying, here's the important finding. We are weak on the very attributes the market values highly, and we are strong on the attributes they don't care about. Here's a good resource for you. This gives good guidance on how to convey different types of data. But let me caution you, this book was written by the woman who's the graphics editor for the Wall Street Journal. She works for a print medium. And so some of her visuals are going to be very complicated, and they might work fine on a piece of paper and work less well projected on a screen. So keep that in mind, the difference between a print document and a document projected on a screen. But it's a good source. Thanks very much. See you next time.